Hi, welcome to Agile Encounters. My name is Paweł Feliński and today's topic is what to do to manage multiple stakeholders. Last month, we were talking in general about stakeholder management. Here I wanted to discuss with you three practical techniques to do so at scale. Let's take a look at the topics that we will cover. So first of all, I want to spend some time discussing the technique of an upstream Kanban, also known as discovery Kanban. We'll start with that. Then maybe not a technique, but a few hints about hosting user conferences with your users or customers. And finally, very popular, but I think forgotten technique of by feature. Although I could spend hours discussing each of them, I'll be focusing mainly on how you can use them to manage your stakeholders. That's the point. So let's start with Kanban. Each time you think of the Kanban technique, the Kanban method maybe, you may see in your head more or less this kind of picture. It's a board, right? It's a board with cards with tasks on it, with at least these three columns: to do, ongoing, and done. There are many myths about what Kanban method is, what it is not. Also, multiple schools really trying to tell us what are details. I'm a Kanban University accredited Kanban trainer, so whatever I'll be bringing up here is what you would hear from Kanban University about the method. I know there are other schools, different schools that perhaps use slightly different language, but I think the essence is the same. So first of all, when we talk about the Kanban method, we don't talk about the board. There is the board. A board is a part of the Kanban system. However, the board is not the end of the Kanban. I think it's just the beginning. We would like to visualize the process that you have. So very often, instead of three columns, to do, ongoing, done, which are Scrum sprint backlog alike, right? You would see something bigger, like a process for software development with multiple columns. This is just an example. It's not that you have to copy paste it in your product development. Of course, this is not the end. As I said, the board is just the beginning. On top of that, you introduce extra policies, extra features. And for instance, in here you would see we have some swim lanes for defects, features, expedite swim lanes. Some of the fields, some of the columns are switched off for selected swim lanes. Perhaps the color of the cards might be different depending on, I don't know what class of service, maybe work item time, maybe whatever your team agrees on, and so on and so on. Few very important parts of the Kanban board, Kanban system would be limit of work in progress for the columns, as you can see here in the corners, as well as the two important points. These are lines, frankly speaking: commitment point and delivery point. The lead time in our schools, known as cycle time, is elapsed time for a card between the commitment point and delivery point. And there are extra rules around it that I'm not going to cover. There are also policies, like for instance pull policies, that we can visualize on the board, and so on and so on. Typical Kanban board, and the example is here on the slide, is in practice a so-called downstream Kanban or delivery Kanban. That means it's a Kanban system used to optimize the flow of work done in delivery. You know what to do. In my example is in the column to do, and when your team says, we want to do it, we will do that. That's our commitment. You simply pull the work from to-do column through the commitment point, and you do your best in order to deliver it. That's delivery Kanban. Some of you may ask, what happens before delivery, right? Where the requirements come from, and the topic of this webinar is stakeholder management. And typically, stakeholders are not so much interested in what happens in delivery. They are interested when it will be done, when they can expect release or deliver literally, but not necessarily what are exact columns for development team, what are the stages of their product or service delivery. What they might be interested in is what happens before the downstream Kanban. If we take a look at it, This is just this is not a board. This is the conceptual view. What happens or should happen before the delivery Kanban, or also known as downstream Kanban, is upstream Kanban, discovery Kanban. This is that part of our system where we actually talk about requirements. It is a simplistic view very often that a requirement enters the product backlog as you would have it in Scrum, or a to-do column as you would have it in delivery Kanban. Perhaps it also goes through a process of discovery, and why not visualize the process with an upstream Kanban? In the theory, and I hope that it should be the practice in many cases, delivery Kanban is where you work on your commitments. As a team, you agreed you really will do your best in order to deliver it. What is before the commitment point? Ideally, it's not always true, but ideally, these are options. You can discard them. That's the theory. Now, how does it look? How does it look in practice? We're coming back to our board. I moved the board, downstream board, more to the right-hand side. What we should have here instead of the to-do column is the upstream, also known as discovery Kanban. Again, what I will show over here is just an example. It's not that you must copy-paste the process, not at all. Imagine a product or service delivery team that has the following discovery process. There's a hopper where stakeholders can bring whatever ideas they have, new requests or new requirements for the product. Each of the requests goes through a clarification phase in our process. I'm not sure if the entire team is involved or just the product owner, or it's very equivalent in the Kanban method, but we need to be a sort of clarification. Then maybe proper refining, like making the requirements more detailed, adding acceptance criteria, whatever team prefers. Perhaps there's a moment where estimations are done, and only then we can say this is ready to commit. Just an example, I can imagine upstream Kanban that has 2-3 columns, maybe a dozen of columns, depending on the situation. Of course, upstream Kanban is still Kanban, so it's not just a board visualizing it step by what we are doing step by step, but also extra add-ons. For instance, we could or should even have policies for the columns. We would have a limit of work in progress. Interestingly, very often we have a minimum and maximum limit in here. In delivery Kanban, if you recall, we have a maximum limit of cards in a given column or a field. This is important for statistics, for maths, also the theory of constraints. In the upstream Kanban, our purpose is to clarify as many requirements as needed to be ready to be committed. So we have also minimum limit of cards, because I don't want my delivery Kanban to be starved. I want my team to deliver something. Therefore, I need to have maximum but also minimum number of cards. The numbers in here, of course, are just an example. And I'm repeating it because during one of my training sessions a few years ago, Kanban system design class, there was a lady and she thought that the columns that we use in an example are literally the columns that she has to use in her own case, which was not the case. We are using various practices, including the static workshop, in order to create a bespoke board for a team. Coming back to the upstream. That's how it could look like. But what else? Well, the stakeholders, finally. Very often, upstream Kanban is perceived as a tool where stakeholders actually need to pay attention to the first column only. That's the hopper or whatever name you're gonna use. This is the place where stakeholders, or yourself as a product manager, where you can bring your ideas, bring your requests, and that's partially true, of course. But I think there are other opportunities for stakeholders or product managers with stakeholders to cooperate using the upstream Kanban, not only focusing on the first column. Very often you can make a deal or not really agreement with your stakeholders where their support is needed. Hopper, definitely, please come with new requirements, but perhaps I need their attention also in clarification phase. Maybe I need them to help me prioritize in the column just before the commitment point. Again, what you can see over here is just an example. However, it's very important to clarify the inter-process of Upstream with your stakeholders and ask them for support in relevant places. In a similar way to what you would do with your delivery team in downstream Kanban. You would say, hey, these programmers typically operate in the coding column, these testers, QA engineers would operate in the testing column. The same with your stakeholders in here. There's one more aspect of the Upstream Kanban, and very important, it's over here. Ideally, whatever happens before the commitment point in Kanban are options. And options means we can remove them. We can find out at any of these steps that the request perhaps doesn't make sense. Maybe already in Hopper, a stakeholder arrived with a request and we find the request irrelevant for our team. We should discard it, move it away. And maybe in clarifying, refining, or any other phase, engagement of stakeholders being a part of this process actually makes a lot of sense. A few years ago, I witnessed something that at first glance was very strange, but actually worked really, really effectively because we used this Upstream Kanban with stakeholders to help the product owner of a Scrum team. So what you would see on the picture that starts with commitment point was Scrum. We didn't have any downstream Kanban. It was a regular Scrum team, a regular product owner within the Scrum team with a regular product backlog. However, in order to clarify the requirements and help refine the requirements by the Scrum team later on, and a bigger process was established because that was pretty sophisticated piece of engineering. The Upstream Kanban had roughly 4, maybe 5 columns, and it ended with a column not named ready to commit, but named the product backlog, as you would expect in the Scrum framework. So actually using Upstream Kanban standalone without the downstream part is absolutely okay, actually very helpful. Coming back to the original thought of the original topic of the webinar, what Upstream Kanban as a practice can offer. First of all, it helps us visualize the discovery process. It is very essential because quite often, especially if you work with external customers, if you're a software house, for instance, your customers are really passionate about the requirements. Not necessarily that they understand what you do with the requirements. What is the process of discovery, product discovery, of finding out what exactly is the need, and helping translate these requirements or requests, let me say so, to more tangible, more specific pieces of work that are understood by your delivery team. Visualization of the discovery process, sharing it with your stakeholders is the first step, I'd say, for better understanding. Secondly, you can always ask your stakeholders to help you with relevant steps in the process, and it's a win-win conversation. Actually, you have better insights in their needs, and they will be way more informed about the issues or problems that you may encounter. Secondly, well, it keeps your stakeholders engaged, and I want my stakeholders to be engaged in the product discovery rather than delivery. Some of you, if you used to be product owners or agile product managers, perhaps you recall these situations where your stakeholders were really interested in details of your Scrum team's daily Scrum. They really needed to see it, understand every day. They wanted status reports every day. If we expose them to Upstream Kanban, the quality of the conversation, the topics of the conversation we have with the stakeholders, I think is way more relevant. We talk about the future of the service or the product, and we talk about their needs. Finally, using the Upstream Kanban can help us set expectations for stakeholders and in general stakeholder engagement into the process of discovery. Without naming it managing stakeholders, I'm actually using a tool that helps us do it. If you are interested, go ahead. There are a few books, blog articles, definitely. Also something that you can find out on the Meirik website, where we talk more about the Upstream Kanban. Now, I'd like to share a few words about the user conferences. And actually, I have no slides prepared for that because there's no need. The trigger for that conversation, for adding that practice to the webinar, was my conversation during a training session, literally a few weeks ago. My customers struggled with understanding how we can engage multiple users, multiple customers, at once. The situation is that they developed a broader platform. Part of their partners are companies that create applications. They create and publish applications that run on the platform, but they also listen to end users that are using these applications, eventually the platform. Pretty complex system, and they never had about user conferences. I was in shock because I thought it's a practice well known, at least in typical traditional product management. So what is a user conference or a customer conference? It's a meetup. Basically speaking, it's a bigger meeting, not so frequently held. I would say once a year, it's sufficient. A decade or so ago, I observed it, for instance, in the aviation industry. So a company that had different airlines as their customers. They invited selected airlines representatives, let's say 100, maybe 120 customers every year for a bigger conference. It's 1 week long conference, and that has multiple purposes. To have a party, of course, with your key customers, to listen to their needs, to give them a report in general what you achieved, how you support the community of users, and finally to present what are your plans and listen to their feedback before you even start doing anything. Having multiple customers at once also gave space to the customers to have a conversation. As a product owner dealing with multiple stakeholders, you definitely been in that position where a few customers want A, another bunch of customers want B. And actually you are the one that they blame because you never want to deliver A or B, you want to deliver both, and so on. How about them talk about it? And whenever the conversation is over, they can come back to you. User conference or a meetup of these people is pretty useful and helpful part. The techniques, a technique that I'm going to present as the last one today, so buy a feature, originally was designed for a tiny team. One product owner with a handful of stakeholders. What we did a decade ago already, we used it at a user conference with, I think, 300, maybe 400 people in multiple rooms with multiple desks. So it works at scale. Let me show you how. So buy a feature. Here we go. Buy a feature comes from the movement of gamification. Perhaps you recall again 10, maybe 15 years ago, it was so popular that instead of boring meetings, even with the board of members, let's have games played. Gamification was something. I think buy a feature as a technique was created even earlier, but that these years made it really popular. How we do it? So you take your key stakeholders. The examples are here on the slide. We have a Peter customer, the CEO, John. We have Hannah from sales, Mary, project manager, and Nick, the IT director. All the stakeholders that you want to. But you are interested about their feedback. So if you have 20, 30 stakeholders, doesn't mean you need to bring all of them. Only these that actually matter for you. If we call the stakeholders matrix that we discussed during the last Agile Encounter, perhaps only these stakeholders with high impact or high power really interested in your product development would be the ones that I would invite in the session. As a product manager, or a product owner or service request manager in the Kanban method, you bring a set of requirements. I'm not telling about 50, 100 requirements, everything you have in your product backlog. It's more for a high level features. That's how I would see. You of course briefly introduce each of the requirements. Your stakeholders need to understand what these ideas are about, and then you want to get their feedback about how they like or dislike the requirements. This technique could be run, as I mentioned, with multiple stakeholders at once, and it's very, very fast because instead of having a bigger conversation, you ask them to vote or technically to buy the features, the requirements that you presented. So give them money. Of course, not the real money, either Texas Hold'em coins, banknotes, or if you did on Mural, pieces of virtual sticky notes, but each of the stakeholders with the same amount of money, and you tell them, guys, please use the money, and you have to use everything you have here, everything that I gave you, use it to buy the requirements. If you are interested a lot in a requirement, you can give way more money, put way more money for the requirement. If you're not interested in a certain one, perhaps you will even leave no coins, no notes over here. And that's it. Each of the stakeholders starts the thinking process, the voting process, that ends up with a distribution of money. In some variations of the game, actually, you can allow your stakeholders after the first round of voting to start collaborating. So if John, the CEO, ran out of money and is also interested in requirement number 1, but have no more notes to put on it, he can cooperate with somebody else who might be in a similar but different situation, and you want to bet together. Anyway, after half an hour, maybe 1 hour of conversation, presentation of requirements, and voting, you end up with a board or a table if it's done physically in one area, where, as you can see, you have money assigned to requirements. It's so simple to sum it up and see what you have. Apparently, according to these stakeholders, requirement number 1 wins. Requirement number 4, second place, number 2 and 3, the last and third place. That gives you an idea about how valuable these requirements, these features are to your stakeholders and what to do about it. Of course, you can make this game slightly better. Without telling the stakeholders, for instance, you can assume that some of these stakeholders are more powerful or their opinion matters more. For instance, out of the CEO, sales manager, project manager, IT director, I think Peter, the customer, and his opinion really matters. So what I can do, I can actually add a weight, put a weight over here. Whatever Peter puts on the board, I'm gonna multiply it by 2. You don't do it during the workshop, of course. You do it later in post-processing when they don't see it and nobody can feel offended. Especially that if somebody's opinion doesn't matter so much, you can put a fraction of weight, 0.5, 0.1, whatever you prefer. Continuing my example, Peter's multiplied by 2. You see that whatever money he put to assign to whichever features, it's multiplied by 2. So the final result is slightly different. We have 7 for 4 and 3 for requirement 2 only. You can do it in post-processing. It's very, very helpful. I think that and this is my experience again, that for a sake of time, but also to help facilitate it, I wouldn't have more than 7, maybe 9 stakeholders doing it together. If you have more, what we had during the user conference with 300 people, don't hesitate to run the buy a feature exercise in parallel with multiple facilitators on multiple boards or multiple tables. And when I recall our user conference these years ago, we had at least 4 big conference rooms with 12, maybe 15 tables each, and 7-10 people per table, and each table had a facilitator. It's a big event, as you can see, but we did it in 1 hour, and that helped prioritize backlogs of many products and very important initiatives for the forthcoming year. To sum up, buy a feature, although looks simple, it's a very powerful technique and has multiple benefits. First of all, it's very fast and engaging. After explanation of the basic rules, you can I guarantee you will have a lot of engagement from your stakeholders. Please mind, this is an exercise that you can run online or in person. You don't have to call for a big user conference to use buy a feature. Actually, the most simplistic way, it was before Mural or Miro tools existed, the most simplistic version of buy a feature I survived was pretty effective. It was with Microsoft Excel online. So multiple users working on one spreadsheet, and that's it. It's also absolutely doable. And finally, it works well even with hundreds of people. Not that I recommend doing it on a daily basis, but this is one of these techniques where scale doesn't actually matter a lot. You need more facilitators, obviously, but you can expect way more interesting data. All right. So today we covered the topics of the Upstream Kanban. I told you a few words about holding user conferences or customer conferences or stakeholders conference in general. And I mentioned technique of buy a feature that typically is in the toolkit of product owners, but I rarely see it's used. I think it's one of these forgotten tools that perhaps we need to refresh. What's next? Well, you tell me. You tell me, please, if you ever used any of these or you want to use to try them out. Don't hesitate to leave a comment on LinkedIn or under this webinar on our YouTube channel. I'm really interested what your experiences are. Now, next month we're gonna have a slightly different topic. I'm going to talk about small steps management, April the 12th, same time, same place, obviously. If you're not yet following us on YouTube or LinkedIn, please do so. You will have latest news always brought to you. For today, that's it. Thank you very much.